So you've got a seafaring ancestor. You've scoured the census, birth, and death records, and then poof, they're just gone. They seem to walk onto the page, maybe sign a marriage certificate, show up in one census, and then vanish. You've hit one of the most frustrating brick walls in maritime genealogy. But what if I told you the biggest mistake you're making is looking for the man, and that the secret to finding your lost sailor is to follow the ship? Yes, it sounds completely backwards, I know, but it's the one strategy that demolishes the most stubborn brick walls. And today, I'm going to show you how this strategy works. Today, on Trace Your New England Roots. Hello, my friends. Welcome back. In today's episode, we help one of our viewers on their quest to end the mystery surrounding an ancestor who is a ghost. Her only clue is that he had received a sailor certification as a citizen of the United States in the port of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1865. But after that, he disappears. There's no death record, no will, no probate, and no grave. This is a genealogical mystery that has plagued her for years, and today we're going to discuss a strategy that has helped many genealogists and family historians break through their maritime brick walls. But before we get into this method, let's just admit it, finding sailors, it's hard. The very nature of their job made them ghosts in the official records. A census taker knocking on a door in Boston in June isn't going to find a guy who is currently rounding Cape Horn. Sailors were by definition a transient population. They rarely owned land. They didn't show up consistently in city directories and were often at sea when the records we rely on were being created. They lived in a world with a totally different paper trail, one that's built on voyages and vessels and not on land and property. So the standard genealogical playbook that works wonders for farmers and blacksmiths, it completely falls apart. You can search for a man's name until you're blue in the face. But if he's signed on to a different ship every few years under a slightly misspelled name, you're chasing a phantom. The key here isn't to find the man in a sea of records. It's to find the single well-documented ship that he was on. So this is where we flip the script. Stop thinking about your ancestor as a person. I know that's hard. And start thinking of him as part of the ship's official paperwork. I mean, think about it. A ship, unlike a man, has a remarkably consistent and regulated paper trail. From the day it was built to the day it sank, a ship was a registered, documented thing. It had an official number, it had an owner, it had a captain, and its voyages were tracked meticulously. The logic here is simple. A man can change his name, fudge his age, or even switch his nationality. But a ship's name and official number are far more stable. And by focusing on the vessel, you anchor your research to something that's tangible. That ship becomes your floating archive. Its logs, crew lists, and port records are the census vital and land records of your ancestors' life at sea. This is the follow the ship method. It's about tracing the container to find what was inside. You'll be amazed at the details you can uncover about your ancestor's life, even when he isn't mentioned by name everywhere. Now, let me tell you a story that shows this in action. I was working with a client who had a classic brick wall. Her great great grandfather was a mariner from a small New England town in the mid 19th century. He showed up on a marriage record and is listed in the 1850 census with his family, and then he's just gone. The 1860 census lists his wife as a widow. The family story that was passed down for generations was that he was tragically lost at sea, which is a sad but all too common tale. They had looked everywhere: death records, newspaper archives for shipwrecks, you name it. There was just nothing. And as far as they knew, he had sailed over the horizon and just simply ceased to exist. This is where we stopped looking for the man and started looking for the ship. We did have one tiny clue, a faded family letter that mentioned the name of his last vessel. There was no year, it was just the name. And the first step was identifying the ship. We turned to resources like Lloyd's Register of Shipping, which began in the 18th century and is now largely digitized. And by cross-referencing the ship's name with its home port, we found it. We got its official number, its tonnage, and even the captain's name. Now we had our target, and we started tracking the ship's voyages through digitized newspapers. Port cities had entire sections dedicated to shipping news, arrivals and departures. And we followed the ship on its transatlantic trips. And then we actually hit the jackpot, a record of it leaving for a long haul voyage to Australia. We followed that paper trail across the ocean and we searched the port records for Sydney, Australia. And there her ancestor was. Our client's ancestor listed right on the inbound crew manifest. The ship had arrived safely, but here's where the story got interesting. When we pulled the departure crew list for the return journey, his name wasn't there. Yes, he did arrive in Sydney, but he never left on that ship. This wasn't a story about being lost at sea. It was a story of desertion. And then digging into the local records in Sydney, we found the truth in the court records. He was being sued for debts he had racked up. He hadn't died. He jumped ship to start a new life. He even remarried in Australia. All the while, his first wife, our client's ancestor, believed she was a widow back at home. The brick wall didn't fall because we found a death record. It came crashing down because we followed a single ship across the globe and found the real story on the high seas, but in the paper trail it left behind in port. If you're finding this case study useful, take a moment to subscribe. We do regularly post videos that break down tough research problems with real world examples just like this one. So, how can you do this yourself? Let's break down the follow the ship method into 4 clear steps. We'll walk you through it. Step 1, you find the ship's name. This is your starting point. And honestly, it's the most important piece of the puzzle. Where do you find it? You start with what you have. You talk to relatives. You dig through old letters, diaries, or photos, and then you hit the records. An ancestor's marriage or death certificate might list their occupation as a mariner or a sailor, and you might get lucky with a ship's name. But the real game changers are mariner-specific documents. Look for what is called the Seaman's Protection Certificates in U.S. records, or applications for master's or mate's certificates. These often list previous vessels. Even a census record placing your ancestor in a port city can be a huge clue for you. Your second step is to profile a ship, and once you have a name, you need to be sure you have the right ship. And because a lot of vessels had the same name, this is where finding its official number becomes your best friend. For British ships after 1855, the Cruise List Index Project is a fantastic free resource for finding this number. For other ships, check registers like Lloyd's Registers of Shipping. These books give you the ship's vitals, its tonnage, when it was built, its owner, and also its home port. This profile is what helps you pick your ancestor's ship out of a lineup. Step 3 is to track the ship's voyages. So now put on your detective's hat and start tracking the ship's movements. Your number one tool here is historical newspapers. Major genealogy websites have massive searchable newspaper collections. Search for the ship's name in quotation marks and then look for the shipping news or marine intelligence sections in these newspapers. These list daily arrivals and departures, letting you build a timeline of that ship's journey. Official logs are another goldmine if you can find them. The Mercantile Marine Act of 1850 required British ships to keep detailed logs of their voyages, and yes, including ports of call and notes on the crew. Many of these are held in national archives and maritime museums. Your fourth step is to dig into the port records. The port is where the story truly unfolds. For every port the ship visited, you need to dig into local records. The most critical documents are the cruise lists and agreements. These were the contracts that existed between the captain and the crew for any given voyage. It lists each sailor's name, their age, their birthplace, and even sometimes their previous ship. Comparing the arrival list to the departure list is exactly how you can spot a desertion like this, in our case study. But don't stop there. Check local court records. Sailors were often involved in disputes over wages or debts. Also, look at local hospital or coroner reports. And finally, don't forget local historical societies and maritime museums. They will often have unique manuscript collections and diaries that you won't find anywhere else. So as you can see, a sailor's life was really written on a different kind of paper. It wasn't recorded in the town hall, but in logbooks and shipping offices scattered in ports all over the world. When you shift your focus from a man to the ship, you're not just trying a new search term. You're stepping into your ancestors' world and using their records. It's a challenge, yes, for sure, but it leads to breakthroughs that feel impossible with traditional methods. And your ancestor's story might not be in that census that you've checked 100 times. It could be waiting in a dusty crew list, in a foreign archive, or in the shipping news of a forgotten newspaper. The ship is your key. So now I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments if you're looking for a seafaring ancestor and what walls you've hit. Try this strategy out and let me know how it worked. You never know when someone in the community might have the exact clue that you need. And don't forget to subscribe for more tips on demolishing your genealogy brick walls. Until next time, this is Eric with Trace Your New England Roots, where history starts with your family.